Thank you for joining us. You're now tuned into the Re-Up Podcast. With me today, as always, is my co-host Hector61. And this afternoon, we have another great guest joining us live on Zoom. This media personality took her love for music and her artistry, and what it did is that it turned her career into working behind the scenes of music in the music business. She previously worked at SONY Music before becoming a social media curator over at TIDAL Music. She recently also launched the first sub-flagship drill playlist for TIDAL called Drill Hype, where you can listen to some of New York's best drill artists such as Pop Smoke, Fabio Foreign, Chef G, and others. Her journey has allowed her to come across various notable artists in the music industry such as Don Toliver, CJ McFly, J Electronica, Meg Thee Stallion, and more. So here to talk about more about the industry, let's give a warm welcome to Mel Mercedes. How's it going, Mel? How are you?
Wow,
let's get it.
You guys.
Thank you. We appreciate it.
You guys really do your research. That is funny as hell.
Well, listen, I wouldn't call us journalists or anything, but we at the least we gotta do a little bit of research.
What are you talking about? That's journalism, plain and simple.
All right,
Always got to do my.
All right, so before we get into the specifics, we've kind of asked all of our guests to start the show, how their kind of like work schedule and life schedule has kind of worked out since coronavirus hit, since everything's kind of been on pause and any type of upcoming plans at the beginning of 2020 have kind of been canceled. So how have you responded to coronavirus, both work and personal wise?
Well, it's definitely been challenging. I was so blessed because right as soon as the virus hit, I landed this job. I was in between jobs for a few months. I was at SONY previously. And then I was just like, I was on the lookout for something new. And I got in at TIDAL and I was there for 2 weeks. And then, global pandemic, the city shut down. Everyone stayed home and worked from home. So yeah, you can imagine, like, as someone that was new to the team, having to adjust, and I guess learn remotely basically, and just adapt to working with the different teams completely digitally. So yeah, it was a little difficult at first, but I'm so lucky that my team is just super dope. I work with James and Adrian on the digital team, and we've just adjusted well. We do these daily check-ins with one another, and I think it's just about just staying in constant communication with one another, and really creating a routine. Because it's so easy to just get into this lull space and not know what to do with your life every day because you're quarantined. But yeah, I think most people have managed to create some sort of routine for themselves, to be honest.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Also, can you explain to us exactly what responsibilities you have at TIDAL?
Yeah. So I'm on the social team. So I basically I work with the editorial team pretty closely, which is playlisting. Okay. I don't even explain that to you guys because I didn't even know. I thought editorial was they would write articles. Yeah. But they manage the playlist. We work with artist relations and basically all the teams across the company. Because we are the digital front and we operate those digital campaigns, so we work closely with all those teams to come up with marketing campaigns and initiatives for artists when they're releasing things. Okay. Yeah, so we work closely with the different artist teams and come up with different concepts to promote new singles or album releases. It varies every time.
That's amazing. What do you think TIDAL does differently than a Spotify or Apple Music?
So, and I'm not even saying this from a biased standpoint. I feel like TIDAL is just more tapped into the culture. Okay. I don't even know if I'm allowed to say that, but yeah. I just feel like TIDAL's more tapped in. I think when you're Black owned and when you're artist owned, you just automatically have that advantage where
absolutely.
Where you're championing for the artist, you're championing for the real culture, and you're not just exploiting it. It never feels insincere in that way. So I think that's the advantage that we have. It's and also everyone that I work with in the company, everyone in the company that I've come across is really actually a hip hop head, really actually a music head. They're actually passionate about this, and it doesn't it doesn't even feel like, oh, I'm the only like hip hop head here. Like it just feels like everyone is.
Right.
So when everyone cares about the culture in that way, like you have even more to work with. It's more inspiring.
Right, yeah, because Tidal was made by Jay-Z and by Kanye West, so it kind of feels like not only is it black owned, like you said, but it's actually like made by one of the greatest hip hop artists of all time. So even though Tidal goes into other streams of music and other genres, of course, it's basically a hip hop base. So of course, like the culture is always going to be there.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it was started. Jay bought it, I believe, from some Norwegian company or something.
Yeah, that is true, right?
Yeah, that's what happened. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he got a bunch of partners in, like the Yays. I think who else partnered up with him? I could have swore.
Did Rihanna partner up with him?
I was gonna say Madonna, but I was gonna say something. But I remember, I think was Nicki part of the team too? I can't remember, but I know it was a minute ago. Ye was obviously there. He partnered up with a bunch of people.
Yeah, I mean, how old are you guys? Sorry,
Oh, good, 23.
I'm 25.
25. Okay, cool. So I don't know if you guys were on Twitter when Tidal launched. Were you on Twitter?
That was like the early 2010s, right? Like 2012, 2010, something like that.
Yeah, and I remember like everyone changed their profile picture to that like aqua blue.
Oh yeah, I didn't remember that.
Yeah, that was the launch, and it was like Jay, Rihanna, Daft Punk, Nicki. It was like all these huge stars that like rallied together to like.
They called them the Avengers, I think. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It's crazy to see how like big titles become from like when obviously since me and Hector were younger to now. It's kind of seemed like because at first it was kind of like this crazy idea, and no one thought that they were ever going to compete with the Spotify. That was still kind of like up and coming, and the Apple Music, of course, iTunes was always a huge staple, kind of like the ones that did it first for the most part. But that's crazy to see how Tidal's crazy now, because Tidal has their own podcast now, like their own like media stream, so they kind of like expanded to more than just music.
Yeah, that's a fact. But nothing happens overnight, and I think that's like so important to keep in mind always. Like, when you start a company, like you're not gonna hit the ground running and boom, it's a hit, it's a smash. Like everything takes its time. But yeah, in regards to like the different avenues that we venture into, like one thing that I know like Tidal is like very prominent on is like the live streams. So we do lots of like concert live streams. And since we've been like quarantined, we've shifted that content to like at home live streams of like different channels that people can tune into and just like live stream concerts all day at home. We were doing that for some time. But yeah, we try to explore those different avenues as much as possible and respond to like what our demographic wants.
Right, absolutely. I was gonna ask you, before we get into any specifics on your career so far, would you say, like you said, you told us in the beginning, we're living in a digital media age now. So would you say you're the interactive type? Like, have you had these type of interviews before? The kind of like Zoom interviews just like these. Like, are you used to them by now, or would you say that you're more of a face-to-face type of person?
I don't know. I've never done one, to be honest. But they are becoming way more common. Like I see my peers do them all the time. Like they join Instagram lives and like
right
careers and shit. I haven't done it yet. This is actually my first time. So, but yeah, I think it's dope. I think it's cool because I think it creates like this world of ideas where everyone can there's less gatekeeping of that knowledge. There's less gatekeeping of that like information that you would have had to really rack your brain and like Google different things about like your preferred career choice or like, the industry that you're most passionate about. I think it's just like a lot more accessible now, which is, I think, is fire.
Right. Yeah. This whole Zoom thing, I was a little uncomfortable with at first because like I'm more of a face-to-face person, especially like in this career. I kind of chose it because you get to, talk to people in person. You get to, feel out their energies, how they're feeling. Like, conversation was always meant to be face to face. It was never supposed to be like over technology. That's just kind of became
real physical energy.
Yeah, no, of course. But I guess now like it's a good tool for us to use because now I got used to it. So now it's like easy. Now it's more of like a daily routine. I only did like one in studio interview that was yesterday. Other than that, all of our interviews since I guess like March 15th have been via Zoom.
Yep.
Yeah, so it was something for us to kind of like get used to. But I think it's good because we do have future guests that are from the UK. So obviously right now we're not gonna be able to go to the UK or they're gonna come over here. So now Zoom is gonna be something that we're gonna have to use more often. And Zoom's gonna be cool now, even when we get back into studio interviews, because let's say like me and Hector are somewhere else doing something else, or the artist can't make it for some reason. We can still do it like an hour, 30-minute session on Zoom and just have a piece of content right there without missing anything. So I think it was tough at first for us, but we definitely got used to it. It's definitely a huge asset for us.
That part scares me a little bit sometimes. I'm not even gonna lie, because it's like it almost makes me feel like people are gonna think then that you're like 100% accessible at all times. You know? So
Yeah.
that's something that like
I like how you looked at it from that angle.
Right.
That's
It's
a good
true.
one.
Yeah.
They're gonna be like, "What do you mean you can't join this meeting? Like you have a cell phone?" And I'm gonna be like, "Well,
I have a life too.
I didn't feel like joining the meeting."
For real.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously, like for us, it's a little different because you've been like in a profession for a very long time. So obviously, like the amount of meetings you have a day, you probably have around like 2-3 meetings a day. And well, for us, it's more like, if we could fit in an interview or somebody, even if it's like 3 interviews a day, like we'll do it because we're kind of like on a come up. But of course, like yours is still valid too, obviously. And I think people do need to respect like privacy and have like, even though we're still very accessible 24/7, doesn't mean we're really accessible 24/7. Like all of us have responsibilities as well.
Yeah, that's why I think it's important to learn to set those boundaries and learn to really enforce them. Like set the boundaries and like make people respect them.
Right. So there's also
For
been
real.
a lot of like protests going on. Like along with coronavirus, there's been a lot of protests that kind of like slowed stuff down. Obviously for all the right reasons. How do you think? Well, TIDAL being a black-owned company, well, at least black purchase company. How do you feel that TIDAL has done? Social media wise towards the whole protest and for social justice in general.
These, yeah, I guess it's a little tricky because I'm always like not sure what I can and can't talk about.
Right. Whatever you can talk about, it's fine.
Yeah, but I think that TIDAL is a company that like prides itself in championing Black art, Black artists, and it's not something that we've needed to like, oh, let's take some time and reflect and figure out how we can be even more inclusive. Like we've been about this,
right?
You know what I'm
of course.
saying? Like, and that's what I love about the company. Mm-hmm. So in terms of like social justice and what's going on with the protests, like due to like George Floyd and all the police brutality, that first of all, that has been an issue in this country. I just want to say that.
Yeah, exactly.
It's not like it's a new issue. I think people are just fed up. Yeah, I think that the fact that other larger corporations, like as you've seen, are like putting out these digital statements and like trying to take this initiative, and I think it's great. I don't want to be like too controversial, but sometimes
right.
It's frustrating because sometimes it's like, why is now the right time? Like, why haven't you been outraged? Like,
right.
Are you outraged because you're genuinely outraged, or are you outraged like
because social media is telling you to be outraged? Yeah.
Yeah, because people are telling you like, where's your statement? Where's your statement? So like,
right.
I'm always looking out for like how authentic that really is.
Right.
But I think that all in all, like just the general initiative, regardless, should be just pushing us forward.
Do you feel like certain? I'm sorry. Oh, what were you gonna say? You're done. Do you feel that certain? You don't have to name any specifically, but do you feel like certain music labels should maybe speak out a little more, or if they're not speaking as much, like do you feel like sometimes like music labels get silenced too a lot?
What do you mean? Do they get silenced?
I don't know. Sometimes because a lot of music labels, let's be honest, like are owned by a lot of white people, of course. So sometimes like these types of issues might not really relate to them, and they might not really care. They might only see African Americans and minorities who make a lot of really good music as assets towards, their income for the most part, like in a business. So do you feel like these same exact music labels, do you feel like they're kind of quiet sometimes, these types of issues?
First of all, yes, 100%. But what I think that they could be doing instead of like being reactive, at a time when people are expecting you to like speak up and make a statement or whatever, I think that they need to be working more from like the ground up.
Right.
Like, what are you doing every day to actually empower your artists and not exploit them? So empowerment versus exploitation. Like, how are you operating so that you're setting your artist up for future success and not like failure where, okay, great, we got a couple albums out of this guy or woman and we're done with them. Like we got what we need from them. And it's just like, it just perpetuates the issue. So when I want to hear a response from a company or a label, that's what I want to hear. Like, what are the operational changes that you're making to actually make real valid change, you know?
Right. So one thing about civil, go ahead. Yeah, because one thing about civil rights is that I also think it's about like businesses also telling people that are either partnering them or the employees that they're giving them the same amount of respect business-wise as they would like white counterparts. So for example, like you're not gonna swindle an artist like from a deal and just, you know, like not tell them all the terms and conditions and leave them like on a tough road, because there's a lot of artists that don't know how 360 deals work. They don't know that they have to pay their taxes as soon as they get their deal. Like, you know, they don't know like the certain like ins and outs of the industry. They kind of leave them out to dry. And I feel like that's a kind of a civil rights issue as well, because now like you're using black music and Hispanic music or minority music, and you're just using them like to make you money, but you're not telling them the realities of the business, which is also, I think, like should be illegal for the most part, but also it's kind of like, it's morally wrong too.
I agree, and that's why I think while they should 100% be like reworking the whole operation from the ground up, I think it's so important for artists to like empower themselves and hire an independent attorney. Like make sure
absolutely 100%.
Make sure that your manager has your best interest at heart and that you're not just going with the manager with like the most industry clout or the most like recognizable artists on their roster. Like you really need somebody, a team that's going to champion for you and advocate for you. You know, so I think that that's really important for new artists, especially to keep front of mind, because it at the end of the day, business is business. So, you know, a company is going to look at it from the standpoint of like, well, we have more leverage, you know. So I think that what artists is taking all the precautions to protect themselves and, you know, to see their business through the best way possible.
I think the problem also is that most new artists, especially young artists, they go into the business with a blind eye. That's what it is. And they don't have, like you said before, a representative, let alone their own legal lawyer to back them up. But they go into the business not even like thinking that far. You know what I mean? They usually always want to represent themselves because they think that like they want to count their own dollars. They want to be able to read, you know, that black and white, not really understanding what's going on. You know what I mean? The whole way around, not just one side of the coin.
Yeah.
But I was going to ask you, you brought up a good point about the protesting and the George Floyd unlawful death from last week. So I wanted to ask you, we've seen how over the years police brutality has affected minorities and more specifically the African-American community. So what was your initial reaction when you saw the events that transpired last week and all the backlash that's happened since then?
Man, it's just like, it's always gut wrenching, right? Because like, first of all, I'd be on Twitter. Like, I don't know about you guys, but
that's funny.
I'd be on Twitter and like all this shit is just, it's like the constant regurgitation of like this really kind of like disturbing footage every day. And I think it's almost a little dangerous to be consuming it so much, because then you get to a point where you become desensitized. And what happens when you become desensitized is then you accept it, you live with it, you tolerate it. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be super transparent. I didn't even want to watch George Floyd's killing when it was circulating the internet. I actually didn't watch it for like a week
neither.
Because I was just like, yo, I can't.
It was hard to watch. Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I can't watch another black man being killed at the hands of like authority again, because first, this is an everyday
keyword. I'm sorry, keyword again.
Yeah, keyword again, and that's the part that upsets me is like, you know, a lot of these companies that are speaking up and against this is just like, where were you guys? Like, this is not you.
Seriously.
You know what I'm saying? Like, while it's definitely supporting the cause and it's definitely pushing the movement forward, you know, like their stance on the matter, it almost upsets me because it's just like, you know, we've been trying to tell you guys about this. You know what I'm saying? We've been raising these flags. But yeah, no, I think that all in all though, like it can only push us forward. So I definitely feel inspired by that.
Oh, for real. I think also when you look at things in a certain point of view, like this talk has been ongoing for centuries. Forget about it. But like, for example, Colin Kaepernick started kneeling 4 years ago, almost 5. And since then, he got blackballed. We know the rest is history. We know the story that goes on with that person. And that's just, I was telling, as we told the previous guest, that's sort of, I told a guest of ours, it's sort of like they almost want to like go ahead and act like there's no such thing as white privilege. I think that's the problem. And they don't want to address the issue that's ongoing. But for you, as a young Dominican American, and us Hispanics who are perceived as minorities, right? We know that we're constantly being labeled, marginalized in some sort of fashion, whether it's where we live, we work, travel, etc. Have you ever felt some type of systematic type of racism at the workplace? Tell us about it.
Well, first of all, I'm Dominican, but I'm a Black Dominican. Like, no questions. There's no if, ands, or buts. Like, I'm a Black Dominican. I've been saying this since I was a child. You know, and if I hear that. Yeah, and if I didn't know it, then I was told it. You know what I'm saying? Like, It's never been a choice for me to like, oh, like let me
like disregard my past, my race.
Yeah, I never had that choice because this is the skin that I live in.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, and I've been so fortunate and blessed that my family, you know, we all know the stereotypes and the anti-Black narrative that exists in the Dominican Republic and in Hispanic communities.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Always, yep. Yeah,
so like I've been so fortunate that my family didn't share that mentality. My family took it upon themselves to educate us, my siblings and I, about our Blackness and to tell us, yeah, you are Black, and you know, like embrace that. But yeah, have I felt that racism? 100%. You know, a white person is not going to look at me and say, oh, does she speak Spanish? Like, let me maybe consider her a little more.
Right.
Oh, they see you're Black, and period.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, I think it is what it is. Like, I don't even know what else to speak to in regards to that. Like, absolutely, I've felt that. And actually, it used to fuck with me until I learned, like, you know what? I'm not going to allow this to, like, fuck with my spirit. And it's really hard. Like, it's
absolutely
to not let it actually bring you down and fuck with your spirit. But yeah, it's too prevalent. And I think especially, like, you know, New York, most people are like more progressive or whatever, but you still feel those microaggressions from people, whether intentional or not intentional.
Absolutely.
Right.
You know, especially now. All right, well, thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate that. So on a lighter note, so talk to us a little bit about your background, who you are, and how you even got to, you know, why did you decide to work for SONY and TIDAL? Was music always a thing, like a huge inspiration for you when you were younger?
Yeah, I've always been a real heavy music head. I always knew I was gonna make a career in music. I was always very into like pop culture, music culture trivia. For some reason, like I was obsessed with VH1 Classic and like all those documentaries.
Yeah. Yep.
Nice.
Yeah,
those
like
are the best.
That was my shit. And you know, I always used to come to my parents like, did you know that this artist accomplished this at this?
I still do that.
Yeah, and like my parents used to be like, you know, because when you come from another country to the United States, granted, my parents were born and raised here, but when you come from an immigrant family, they're just like, yo, what are you talking about? Like,
right, yeah. Hip hop's a very new thing
seriously.
For them. Please choose something lucrative because you're scaring me. You know what I'm saying? But like, I always used to tell my dad, one day this is gonna pay my bills, so I don't give a fuck. They've always been super supportive. But I started I think it was 2013. I had like my first internship at Atlantic Records. I started there, and I branched out after that into fashion, and I completely hated it. Like, you want to talk about systemic racism? Holy shit.
Yeah, you're telling us, man.
I've
Yeah.
heard things, right?
I got horror stories for days, you know, like I was like, nah, I can't do this. But my heart was always with music regardless, you know? So then I went back to SONY. I started at SONY. I was at SONY for like 2 years on the digital analytics team. So we would just advise the different labels when they had like an artist album release or anniversary or like a new single release, or if like they were just building an artist, they would come to us to like really break down the data behind this artist, like, you know, their demographic, their listenership, just like a ton of data, analytical information, so that we can advise their campaigns, like with real strategy. But I left SONY because I was in pursuit of something, you know, a little more creative and a little more hands-on. And that's how I wound up at TIDAL on the digital team.
You mentioned how you wound up kind of almost like not transcending, but crossing over into the fashion world. At any point, even though you said you had a passion for music, did it almost like interfere, like, or was it at all that you like felt like, hey, I might kind of like doing this fashion thing, or did you have your set goal? No, music is what I wanted to do.
I've only ever seen music in my life, period. Like, I've only ever seen that for myself. But you know, I come from a family, my father and his father had a hat factory, so that's been in my blood, like, you know, that pursuing that maybe at some point, like I definitely wanted to explore that. But when I got to fashion, it was just so unwelcoming. And you know, I'm not even trying to sound like a victim, but it is what it is. The industry is just not welcoming people.
Call a spade, right?
Exactly, call a spade a spade. You know, it definitely called for like uncomfortable situations. But when I started at Atlantic Records, prior to my fashion gig, I remember like it was my first music job. And I remember feeling like, damn, like the magic was kind of lost for me, you know, because I was just like, I've always been super passionate about music. So when I got like the real insight to like the business side of things, it was a little disheartening, because I was just like, damn, this is all a business. Nobody really cares about the art. You know what I'm saying? Like that really struck a chord with me. So I was just like, fuck this, you know, and I went to work with music. But
right.
That's when I had that realization, like, you know what? Yes, for a lot of people, it is just a business. For a lot of people, they are just seeking to exploit the culture. But like, you need to be that change,
right?
You know? So that I took that upon myself. I was like, you know what? I still am super passionate about music and the culture. So if I can be one of those few good people in the industry, then I will gladly take on that like role. Not to say that like I've accomplished so much in my little time, but like I can definitely pride myself in saying that like I'm genuinely passionate about this and I actually care about the music and the art.
I was gonna say that I've seen your playlist, like I've seen your stories, and I've seen the different type of like music that you listen to. The thing I like the most is yesterday I was going through it and I saw and I heard different samples from like artists from the past, like Curtis Mayfield, Aretha Franklin. And I was like, I've heard samples that are used in hip hop, and I'm like, yo, this is hot. Like the fact that she actually listens to this is hot. Like seriously.
No, I really do be listening to that. That's not even like an Instagram front, I swear to God.
That's great. That's great. You keeping the culture actually alive, because I'm myself am a big throwback head myself. So
yeah.
Like honestly, thank you.
Wow, thank you. I think it's so important to like do your homework too. Like it makes it more fun.
It does.
It
does,
fun.
absolutely.
And, you know, like we all got our like issues with Kanye and shit, but like I swear that the person that put me on to sampling and samples was Kanye.
Yep, it's him.
You know, like I remember,
don't even get me on how I feel about the man.
Yeah, 100% broke my heart. Like I was definitely a Kanye stan prior to the bullshit. But he definitely opens like my minds up to like that world of like different music and like learning to embrace it, and how he uses it as like an instrument to create new sounds. Yeah, no, I love all that type of music.
That's amazing. So I want to go back to the point you made where you said that the fashion world wasn't anything like you expected it to be, even though that was kind of like a negative part of your career, especially after doing like a huge internship at Atlantic. Do you feel like those type of low moments in life are kind of necessary if you want to move on to bigger and greater things, because it prepared you for kind of like, like the bullshit and mishaps that industry might bring?
Yeah, because it definitely showed me like that type of toxicity lives everywhere. It's not just in music. Let's say for those that might experience that type of toxicity, you experience it everywhere. You can experience it in the nonprofit space.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying, where people who are just hungry for credit, or whatever the case might be, like, oh well, I fed 50,000 kids in this country.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you will find that anywhere. So what it taught me was, all right, if I'm gonna deal with this, then I might as well deal with it somewhere where I'm truly passionate about what I'm doing.
Right.
You know what I mean? And like, try to contribute as much positivity as I can. That was my main takeaway from it.
Do you feel like having a what's it called, like thick skin is a huge requirement within this type of industry that we have? Because a lot of people would, for example, like would go into fashion and be so let down and ashamed of the whole business that they would just never like do anything like this again. So you feel like having a thick skin is important?
Yeah, when I was younger and I would hear people talk about, oh, I used to work in fashion and I hated it and I left and blah blah blah. It was so toxic. In my head, I used to be like, oh, you don't, your skin is not thick enough.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I used to be like, I can handle it, and like then I experienced it and I was like, oh shit, this is not for the weak. Like,
no, it's not.
But like I think that what carries you forward, and it's just something also about like adulthood that you learn as you go, is like you have to always keep in front of mind why you're doing what you're doing. Like purpose. You always have to keep your purpose front of mind. Because if not, then you're gonna be in a pool of misery, straight up. And if you feel like you can't find your purpose doing what you're doing, then you need to start over, find something new. Go back to the drawing board.
Right.
But it's so important to always seek your purpose and like live that out,
And for you as music.
Any industry.
Right. So for you, going back to the drawing board was, hey, like this didn't work out fashion. It's all good. Let me just go back to music and doing like what I love exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, facts. I mean, I'm still young. Like,
yeah.
I'm still figuring things out myself. Like, I'm by no means am I like an industry veteran. If in 5 years this don't work for me, then it don't work for me.
Right.
Doesn't mean I'm not gonna have music in the culture like deeply rooted in my heart. But yeah, I think it's just really important to always keep your purpose front of mind.
Do you feel like it's important for college graduates such as ourselves to not just be focused on one specific like dream job or one specific dream career, for us to be kind of like multi-useful and have like multiple assets to ourselves?
Yeah, I think you were looking for the word multifaceted.
Well, yeah, exactly. I was like, let's talk there.
Yeah, hell yeah. When I was in high school and people used to ask me about college, I used to start crying. Like, I used to be like, don't talk to me about that shit.
No, that's a new one.
Because it was so stressful. It was like, okay, so pick a career and you got to do it for the rest of your life. Yeah. I was like, I am way too young for this. I don't know if you guys can relate.
I can relate. I had no idea what I wanted to do.
They make it sound like it's a prison sentence.
Yeah, I was like, this shit sounds scary. But are you both doing communications?
Yes, both of us.
Yeah,
we're doing digital media. Yeah.
I did comm too. I did communications too. And the reason I did it because I was like, you know what, like this does. I don't feel like this would inhibit me. Like I feel like I could take this anywhere I go.
Yep, exactly.
And if I really want to hone in on a skill or something, then I can pursue a master's in that or whatever. Like if I wanted to do that, which I did. I wound up getting a master's from NYU in public relations.
Oh, nice. Congrats.
Hey.
But yeah, I definitely chose comm because it was less limiting. It was the least limiting of the majors.
Right.
And speaking of talent though, you've shown that, and like you've said before, you kind of have to, from the get-go, you have to have a passion for something, or it's like you said, it's kind of like a cliche. It's been told to us before. you're going to be running in circles. You're just going to be going job to job, not knowing what the hell you want to do. Yeah. But for you, you kind of almost, you have a set mind that you know what you love, and you take on that task and you give your best effort. So personally, I have to give you props for that, because I'm the same way when it comes to what we do, me and Mateo do.
Yo, I love it. I was telling him earlier, like, yo, I love what you guys are doing. But I see you guys are really like dedicated to it, so it's dope.
Thank you so much. And I was gonna ask you though, you went ahead and you launched TIDAL's first flagship playlist, and it had to do with the Brooklyn drill movement. I want you to talk about like, how did that come about, and like, did the man himself, Jay-Z, have something to do with it?
Yo, that's hilarious. So there's different flagship playlists. I spearheaded the drill one. But yeah, for some reason, I don't know why, but like, I've been into drill. I love the high energy. Mm-hmm. I love the artists on the
right.
And I respect them. And I realized we didn't have that that playlist, but our editorial team is like, they're beasts. Like, they're really on top of it in terms of like curating like seriously expert playlists. Like I said, everyone is a heavy music head. It just so happened that we didn't have a drill playlist yet. You know, I'm sure at some point they would have come up with one. But yeah, no, I was pretty passionate about getting one, off the ground at TIDAL. And yeah, everybody was super supportive of that. But it was definitely one of my goals going into the company. I can't even front. Like,
yeah, I can kind of see
that's
you
good
wanted
though.
to do this from the start.
Yo, we need a drill playlist. Like, what's up? Especially because, to be honest, like, these kids are always left out of the conversation. Like, yeah, everybody loves it. It's high energy. It's this, it's that. It's cool. And, people want to exploit it, but like, and I'm totally not talking about TIDAL. I'm talking about just like in general in the industry. Like, but no one gives them their credit. No one gives them their like proper moment of shine. Like, they're not even allowed to really have concerts in their home cities because they're too violent. And
exactly.
Absolutely, yep. That's the problem, right?
Police will shut them down, and I think that's so trash. Like, like, what is this, like 1937?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Seriously.
Yeah.
And it's like history always repeats itself. This is
absolutely
what is the case with gangster rap, like Dr. Dre,
NWA.
That's crazy that you say that, right?
It's the same exact thing.
That's exactly what it is. It's the same exact thing. NWA, Dr. Dre, Snoop, they were rapping about the times that they were living in.
Police brutality.
They were talking about the circumstances and the situations they were exposed to. And like, I'm like, what's the difference? I mean, like, what is the difference,
Not much.
Right.
So yeah, I think it's really important to like support them as much as possible. Especially because like, I think a lot of these artists, like these drill artists in particular, they look at it like, oh, I can eat a lick with this. Even if they're not so passionate about the music, like
they're looking for a come up.
Yeah, they're looking for a come up, and I'm like, why wouldn't we want to support that? Why wouldn't we want to support like kids pursuing the arts? Because that's what it is.
Because they could go into other avenues and everything else that's like negative for them and become a statistic instead of becoming rich, affluent, and like building generational wealth off of art.
Right. And what's funny about that too, what you just said, Mateo, was that the irony behind it is that the leader of TIDAL is is like branded one of the ultimate hustlers.
Yeah, definitely.
That's the funniest thing about it. Like, he's branded as the ultimate hustler. So how could you not support kids that are from the same borough that you are from? And not specifically talking about the man himself. I'm talking about companies in general, these labels. How could you not support? Right. What the movement that's going on, but you're willing to give these kids interviews and kind of expose and, like you said, kind of like benefit off of it.
Yeah.
So I think it's corny, honestly.
Yeah, no, I think in the industry, just altogether, like, I think we like I said before, I think sometimes we set these kids up for failure. Like, sorry.
Nah, worry about it. You're good.
You're good.
you know, I think sometimes, like, for example, they'll go on these interviews with like DJ Vlad, or like they'll give academics the time of day and like incriminate themselves and shit. And it's just like, damn, man, like, you know, I personally just would love to support them in their like artistic ventures as much as possible.
No, seriously, I think what we need to do as a city, knowing that we're in a phase right now, and right now that they're kind of like the next wave up. So we have to be able and be willing to push the artists that come out of our city. But I wanted to kind of like focus on a vocal point that you said earlier. They're not given the chance, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that they're not even given proper like booking tour dates or like allowed to perform in venues. And speaking of the Brooklyn drill movement, I want to get your opinion on a problem that we're really like facing as a generation, because unfortunately with the violence that goes on, at the start of the year we lost the face of the drill movement at this certain point in Pop Smoke.
Yeah.
And now over the past 2 months, we've lost about up to 5 upcoming rappers in the drill movement due to gun violence. Artists like Nick Blicky, KJ Baller, King Shooter, and Houdini.
Yep.
So do you think that it's something that has to change? Because like you said, it's almost like a throwback. It's kind of almost something that happened 20 years ago, the same conversation. Gangster rap is killing our kids. But now, 20 years later, could we be saying the Brooklyn drill movement is killing our kids? What's your take on it?
No. I think what the risk is being, you know, boots on the ground in these communities where, like, let me just reel it in. Like, first of all, when these protests kicked off, in memory of George Floyd and to advocate on behalf of like Black Lives Matter and against police brutality, like everyone pushed back their release, right? Every major artist pushed back their release. But you know who didn't was the drill artists. Like, why is that? And I think we really got to study things like that. Like, and I think it's because they live this life every day. This is not news to them. Like,
exactly.
They're in survival mode every day. Like,
right.
Oh, COVID, you want us to like be in survival mode? Guess they've been in survival mode.
Exactly.
Even for COVID, you know what I'm saying? Like, so they were still pushing out releases. Like Sleepy he dropped his album. I don't know if you guys heard.
Oh yeah, I have.
I've heard a couple tracks.
Sleepy for
good.
President.
Fired.
Absolutely. OD.
Ross Swish dropped. So I'm
waiting on more work from him. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I'm a fan. But I think it's like, yo, these this is what these guys are rapping about. It's surviving these environments. You know what I'm saying? Like, do I think that music is killing them? No. I think that the environments that they live in and like the constant need to survive, that
right.
puts them at a greater risk.
Right. You painted the perfect imagery, honestly. I like how you put that.
Yeah, it's a fact. Like, and Nick Blicky passing, like he was definitely, he was gonna blow. Like I had like 100% like stock invested in him.
Right.
But it's definitely disheartening. It's definitely sad, and even just as a fan of drill music, I'm always like a little weary to get like a little too invested into an artist, because right. I'm just like, damn.
You never know.
You never know. You really never know. So that's why I think that like it's unfair to them to like not support them.
At the same time, I also feel like police departments really don't protect a lot of these artists as much as they should. Like, for example, the whole Pop Smoke murder, obviously because of COVID and because of whatever, like they're not investigating that right now, which means that there's another person who's a low life hater, whatever, who like obviously like took someone's life out like the cowardly way, that's still free right now, who's in probably like, who knows where they're at. They could be outside the country for all we know. So I feel like it's kind of like we always clash, the hip hop community always clashes heads with law enforcement, not only because of, how they treat regular civilians, but the way that, like Chink's, the Chink's drugs murder hasn't been solved yet. you know, you can count other countless murders that have happened over the past 20 years that haven't been solved yet, and no one knows why. But for some reason, when it comes to like a Jeffrey Epstein or for like these other like white investors or anybody who's like Caucasian and a billionaire, they automatically find, you know, they're on the case as soon as possible. So I also feel that's a huge issue that law enforcement has to fix.
Yeah, I think you hit it on the nail. Like, oh, why don't these things get further looked into? I know why.
Yeah.
It's because they live in lower income communities and they're Black.
Period. Yep.
The authority don't give a fuck what happens or what transpires, and they say like, well, it is what it is. Like, it's gonna happen regardless. And that is why I say like I have respect for these artists, these drill artists, because like they're really rapping about what's going on. They're not gonna stop like, oh, because everyone is now realizing how severe the circumstances are.
Yeah, exactly.
For 1 week. Blackout Tuesday, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, like it's exactly. Also, going back to what you're talking about with like police kind of like censoring artists in a sense, like with NWA up until now. I have a perfect example of that actually. I went to Rolling Loud in City Field this past fall, and Pop Smoke was supposed to perform, Chef G was supposed to perform, and Don Q was supposed to perform. NYPD released a statement not even a week before the actual like event, like before the weekend, you know, because it was gonna be a 2-day festival, like before the 2 days that we're gonna go on, saying that they weren't allowed to perform because they were a threat. And at the time, I was pretty furious because, you know, the whole reason I bought tickets was obviously not to see Rocky, to see Travis Scott and a whole bunch of people, but I really wanted to see Don Q, Chef G, and Pop Smoke, and Pop would have been crazy, and like nothing ended up happening. So yeah, yeah.
Especially if you're from New York, like that's who you want to go see.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And like Rolling Loud, like New York, it was designed like, you know, for artists from all over the place to come and, you know, like, and, you know, experience that the New York culture and all that. But, you know, New York Rolling Loud was pretty much for like, you know, for the Chef G's, the Pop Smoke, the Jay Critches, because Jay Critch didn't even show up in solidarity with Don Q and Pop Smoke. So that also, you know, transpired into that. So now it's like, damn, like I want to see Jay Critch, I want to see Pop Smoke, Don Q, all these people. And now we're never going to be able to see Pop Smoke perform at a Rolling Loud or a festival again. And that type of stuff, I feel like NYPD should apologize for, because nothing ended up happening at Rolling Loud. Yeah, there were a couple fights here and there, like in the crowd and stuff like that. You probably see on Twitter and all that. But that's about it. Like, it was nothing with the artists. Like, obviously, like, if you're so scared about security, just have more NYPD agents there. Like, that parking lot was filled with police officers. Mm-hmm. You're going to tell me you can't protect, you know, like, high-invested people who are bringing, like, the city and the borough millions of dollars? Like, that's ridiculous, and that sounds a little bit hypocritical because NYPD invests in so, you know, they get you know, the whole defund NYPD campaign is going on right now because they get so much funding from the city, you know, compared to like you know, housing, public housing, and compared to education. So the fact that they can't use that money to reinvest it back into community and protect people that are actually loved and respected, it's disrespectful, honestly, in my opinion.
Right, I agree with you, but like my thing is, okay, you want to censor these local acts, but like, what do you think is going on at a Slipknot concert or a Marilyn Manson concert, or, you know, the list is truly endless. Like, what do you think is going on at those concerts?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? But like, they have the right to just like congregate and celebrate their favorite artists. Like, yeah, that's why that never made sense to me, and I never bought into that shit.
It was disappointing, and like it hurt me even more. Like, not because that was me the first time I ever seen Pop Smoke like live. I was gonna, because that was one of the artists that I was gonna see no matter what. Because each state, because there's 3 stages, and each state has like their own schedule. So depending on who you want to see, like for the closing act, which is the biggest one, you probably go to whichever one first. Right. But the fact that, you know, I wasn't able to see him like perform live in front of so many people, because I know he would have had the whole place going crazy. Yeah, it was disappointing.
Pop was a superstar.
Actually, let's talk about you. And you were on stage actually with Meg Thee Stallion for album release party, and you were in studio with Jay Electronica. So talk to us a little bit about like being with like in the same room, in the same venue as both those huge artists.
Yeah, for Meg, we were celebrating, I think it was the release of her album Sugar.
Yeah.
And it was cool. Yo, I really didn't know how much, like how strong her fan presence was. Like, you know, they call her fans the hotties.
Yeah.
And wow, like they show up for her.
They do.
They love her, and they should, because she's dope. But yeah, like the energy was just so high, and I think that like being there for that particular moment, I was just like, okay, this girl, like, granted, I always knew Meg was a star, but like just to see how hard her fans ride for her. And then for Jay Electronica, like, what can I even say about that? Like, literally,
it's a living legend. Yeah.
Yeah, and the album wound up being like a collaboration with Jay-Z, who is like my favorite rapper of all time.
Yeah.
So it was terrible. Like, it was honor. There are no more words except it was an honor, like, to be in that presence.
Like, what other album release parties or like in studio sessions have you maybe been a part of that like are really like they're worth talking about?
Yeah, like I said, man, everything shut down like 2 weeks into my time in the company. So damn, I can't even remember, but like we did Meg, we did Jay Electronica, we had Rich the Kid, and yeah, I mean there have been plenty of those events, but really I can't wait until we're able to just like go experience those things in real time,
right,
and in person and not digitally, because you're really missing that like human element.
Right. Do you see TIDAL having like more like actual music festivals as soon as COVID kind of ends?
I can't even say. Like, I wouldn't know. Like, who knows what's in the works? Especially like given that they don't know what's gonna transpire for like live performances for like 2 years.
I also saw that you listen to a variety of music from hip hop and soul. You have a ton of samples that you put on your stories and a bunch of music that you listen to in your everyday life, like you said before. Have you ever thought about like actually starting a playlist that mixes the two, rap and soul?
I personally make those playlists for myself all the time. But, I think it's about like creating things that you feel don't already exist. And like, I think that there's so many of those things that exist, like for people that are passionate about sampling and hip hop, especially.
Oh yeah. Like me, I'm a huge head.
Really? Like, you're into samples? Yeah. I think honestly, anyone that's genuinely like obsessed with hip hop is, because you start discovering those different sounds and like how they've been repurposed. And it's always really like a fun experience. So yeah, no, I make those playlists for myself all the time. I'm happy to share them with you guys.
Oh yeah, I'm definitely already a fan. After I saw all the songs that you had up, I was like, yeah, she's down. Like, I can fuck with her.
All right, awesome. So before we let you go, what plans do you have looking forward kind of to 2021? Because 2020 has kind of been like a shit show so far. No one knows what's gonna happen. So 2021, like what can you tell us is gonna like kind of happen with you?
Well, if we make it to 2021,
at this point, yeah.
Perfect point.
Yeah, I'm saying, because this shit has been a complete shit show. Yeah. I think like I'm definitely just trying to get as deeply involved in like in music as possible, and just keep growing in my career in that sense. Like, I think honestly, like if you ask anyone in music, they're always trying to get more creatively involved, and that's because everyone is passionate about music or should be passionate about music.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, I'd love to have as much creative involvement as possible. So I think that if you're passionate about music, that's what you're working towards.
Right.
So we'll see. Hopefully that's in the near future.
All right, it's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
All right, so we want to thank you for having us for joining us. Really appreciate it. You're probably busy for a lot of stuff, but we definitely appreciate you dropped a lot of gems. It's good to kind of see like not the corporate side exactly, but like the TIDAL side of like the music and how like the company, like how that industry really works. So we really appreciate you for sharing us all that.
And actually, sorry to cut you off. I actually want to give her also a shout out. Right before we leave, you also linked like resource guides and sticking up for the repeal of the 58 petition.
Oh yeah.
So I wanted to give you a huge shout out for that, and if you wanted to talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, first of all. But I think that when we're advocating for this cause, like, we should be as actionable as possible. Like, I think that sometimes I think a lot of the conversation is just like, damn, I'm so sorry that like you guys have experienced this. And I'm just like, I don't even care. Like, here are some actionable items you can take, okay? Like, here are some resources. But yeah, no, I think that right now, like 2020, with these protests going on, I think that most people are taking that standpoint. Is like, okay, how can we actually implement change? So yeah, no, that was my thinking behind that. I was just like, you know what, protesters are getting locked up. Here are some bail funds that you can donate to. Here are some pro bono attorneys that you can reach out to, or, you know, just resources galore. Honestly, I didn't even come up with that document. I think the Instagram of the girl that came up with it is Botanical Dyke. If you guys want to like follow her, hit her up.
Definitely, we'll definitely hit her up about that.
Actually, yeah.
All right, that's amazing. Anyway, well, yeah, thank you so much for sharing so much knowledge with us. Obviously, you know, it's very very heartwarming to see that people within the industry, within the actual industry, like a TIDAL, like, you know, like people like that are really up there, like you are, kind of like, you know, are giving back to the community and actually like caring. Because this type of stuff you don't necessarily have to care about, but of course, like you using your past experiences within like the fashion, you know, seeing how fashion works, seeing how like regular life works and everything, seeing how like the inner city life works, you're kind of giving back to, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I love what you guys are doing.
Thank you for even replying to my message. Honestly, you were great.
Nah, thank you. I don't know why, Hector. I don't know why you don't got no pictures on Instagram.
He's gotta work on. Yeah, he's gotta work on that. I've been telling him for a while that start posting stuff. I've been telling him for a while start posting stuff.
For a minute, like, bro, what are you like doing? Because that's the funny thing.
I want to know too.
He wants to be mysterious on IG.
Yeah, that's the funny thing, and that's kind of like for like years now. Like, I don't use it anymore like the way most people would use it for photos and stuff. I only use it to promote the show now. So like I'm really like focused on like the show itself. So like, yeah, I'm gonna post eventually, but you know what I mean? I just be bored. I don't really care for it like that. That's how my take on it.
I feel that. Yeah. I think we're way too attached to like our social identities. So I feel you. I respect it, but yeah. It's very mysterious.
All right,
don't worry, I got you. The flicks is coming soon.
Cool.
All right, Melanie, thank you so much for joining us. This is the Re-Up. We'll catch you guys next time.